Hi everyone, and welcome back to the SW7 YouTube. Today I'm with Matt Pohl. He's going to be taking us through a strength speed session on our new rugby performance block, which is a strength speed block. We're going to do the upper body today, of course, but a bit of a different style that we're going to go for. Matt's going to actually PT me as a dummy athlete, hopefully giving you some insight into what we are looking for in terms of intent, progressions, weight selection, and exercises when we're doing these sessions. So should be a really insightful video for you. So yeah, follow along and tune in.
So idea, what we're looking to do with part of our warm-up is obviously one, mobilize our joints, mobilize our muscles, and sort of making sure our tendons, ligaments, and everything that we're going to involve within the session is loose. What we're also looking to do then is build up and raise our heart rate in order to, when we go into those first couple of sets, we are in the correct place in order then to allow us to train to our full capacity. Okay, so going to go through just a simple circuit. All we're looking to do is just build through, take our first round relatively easy, looking at like 50 to 60%, and then our second round then we're just going to raise the intensity, whether that would be through reducing rest times, whether that would be through increased weight, or whether that would be through increased range of motion. All we're looking to do, we're going to start off with just some sort of shoulder and thoracic sort of extension and mobility, and then we're going to go into some fixed position shoulder work to enable us to loosen ourselves off and make sure that we've got like really strong shoulders, really robust in those really key areas. Okay, so start off with some plate swimmers, then we're going to go into some face pulls. We're going to warm up our delts and our traps, getting ready to bench, and then we're going to go into some fixed position shoulder stuff, which will then essentially allow us to build those really robust shoulders in that really confident position, really good for our rehab and prehab, and then finish off then with just some standard push-ups then, just to warm chest, shoulders, everything else up as we go along. Okay,
Perfect.
Here we go. So
Swimmers up first then.
yeah, nice. Second set, do them off the floor.
Perfect.
Just so we can get that sort of like nice flat sort of position, and then really think about that extension. Sometimes if you go off the bench like that, what it's going to do is put some pressure on sort of your anterior delts in that position, which is obviously a key, is a really good point for us. However, it'd be nice to get both aspects so then we can ensure that we are completely warm as we're moving through.
The floor is really good feedback as well. If you are doing this and you don't know if you're doing it right or you're training on your own, the floor is going to be really good feedback because it's just going to keep you honest to trying to keep those elbows at 90 degrees as well.
Yeah.
And keeping it off the floor, of course.
Yeah,
so
agreed. Because in those positions there, quite quickly, you could actually press out at horizontal instead of like trying to match the angle of the bench.
That's considerably easier than doing
which is really important.
We have a few questions in our rugby thing. We're not chasing too much weight on these. This is just to warm up the shoulders, get a little bit of blood in them. So I'm not looking at this being like a working weight for face pulls. Just looking at keeping the elbows nice and high, pulling to about my nose, and getting a good squeeze at the back as well.
Keep it moving then. Good stuff, nice. Now you're into that fixed position stuff. I would recommend doing this on a bench. It's a little bit easier and also allows us, if you use the floor like we were just talking about then, what happens is in those positions there, this 90-90 position, pretty quickly, you'll hit the floor and then it's like almost like that buzz, that unusual feeling that we're not trying to achieve. So yeah, nice, lovely. Think about that rotation and then pause. Good. Good. It's all about control, okay? So really pushing that control element on stuff like this. Not heavy weights, if anything. This can be done, but just body weight with no weight as well. But just thinking about that control element. Talk about it quite a lot at SW7, that we're not here just to sort of load the weight and sort of increase our maximum load. It's always technique first, and then we can build load through strong foundations. If your foundations are really weak, then what happens is pretty quickly is we're chasing those sort of those positions that we struggle with. So like I said, if you do struggle with that a little bit and that's too heavy, or those positions are really uncomfortable, because obviously rugby players, contact athletes, issues with shoulders like contact sites, like your shoulders, sort of knees, hamstrings, different things. If you do struggle with that, it's absolutely fine to use it with no weight, and then progressively build up as we use this through the program week by week.
It's a tough exercise as well. You're working very small muscle groups in the stabilizers as well, so you're never going to be chasing max load on this.
No.
Use the biscuits, the 1.25s, more body weight, like Polly said, it'll still be very challenging, and it's just about that squeeze in at the top. If you are doing it body weight, switch everything on, start getting that coordination there in those sites. But this is something that rugby players, we see them miss it all the time. I know we talk about it a lot on the YouTube, and this is how we probably intro every video, but it's definitely something that as a rugby player, you need to prioritize this shoulder health, this prehab stuff that we do before you go into your sessions, especially as we start creeping up into strength speed, max strength, where the loads are high, the intent's nice and high. You need to be firing, we need to protect the shoulders, and it just gives us an extra stimulus in a week where we can just build up some of that foundation work in the shoulders to keep them a little bit stronger and a little bit safer when you're playing as well.
Yeah, nice. Good. Push up then.
Push-ups. Now, I quite like using these almost as like my potentiation, like before I start pressing.
Yeah, of
so
course.
I'll come down nice and slow, and it's probably something you guys can do as well. Maybe on the first set, I'll just go feel it out a little bit. But then on that second set, I do like to chase a little bit more of an explosive press and just start switching on. Yeah. Polly's going to obviously intro the first exercise that we have today, but we've got some good bench work, so got to make sure we're switched on for it.
Yeah, well, ultimately, mate, that's just like you're aware, Gas. That's just a bench the wrong way around, isn't it? Ultimately, so we talk about like how warm-ups are effectively like the use we have of a warm-up is going to be to potentiate our next sort of exercise or our next set going in. That stops us from having to then do 3, 4, 5 work-ins or warm-up sets before we get to our work-in sets when we go into our bench press stuff. So ideally, what we're looking to do always is control that eccentric movement, but just think about intent. It's about moving ourselves as quick as we can, because ultimately the speed should be a constant, and that's really important for us. Speed is a constant, and then it's dictated by load, and that's super important, because if I learn to press at a controlled manner, what happens is if I'm pressing slow, my body's used to pressing slow, or my body doesn't understand that it needs to produce that force at that time. What happens is when that max load, or when it starts to get up through my percentage work, what you'll find is your body isn't adapted enough, or isn't taught enough to be able to create those forces in those really sort of vulnerable positions. If I do that from the start, I talk about it all the time when you coach athletes, rugby players, football players. If you do it from like the baseline or the very bottom, and then progressive as we sort of like progress through the exercises, if we can build that intent, that understanding of this is when I create force, then as you go through, the rate or the amount of load that you can shift is always higher.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good as well. It's like a neural primer, gets you firing. Obviously, we've got a bit of a power series right at the start of this session, but it's good just to start getting the nervous system ready to lift as well.
Yeah, of course.
Whew, you can feel that challenge the thoracic a lot more, can't you?
Yeah, of course. Whew. And what it does as well is it sets the scapulars really well. So that's really important. So we talk about people talk about bench setups quite frequently. And it's like, ultimately, if we can't get our scapular control correct, then when we go into bench, we are then sort of like pressing through our shoulders a lot more than we are. And obviously, so as an upper body horizontal push, we are sort of like, it is very much chest bias, and that's the idea. But if I don't learn to retract my shoulder blades, and that's what we talk about with it being in a warm-up, and everything has to almost follow suit. If I'm not doing things in my warm-up, and the chances of it actually translated into my main lifts is a lot less than if I am learning how to do it from the very bottom. So when we're talking about those little tiny things of just even pulling scapulars together, warming your sort of rhomboids, your sort of scaps together, or warming them up efficiently, like people don't think that transfers that much. However, when we go into bench, that's probably one of our key points to make sure our setup position is correct, to make sure we're targeting and like targeting the correct areas, but also getting the most out of the areas. For sure. Like, because that's the issue. Obviously, rugby, a huge thing, horizontal push. Like, people don't think it's just like big don't argues and different things like that. However, like I say this to people all the time, the better I am at bench, the more transferable it is to getting off the floor. Like, it's the same position. It's thinking about getting off, being efficient. But we talk about in rugby all the time about speed to set and talking about getting off the deck and working hard and working around the corner. But if I can slow off the floor, my rate of how quick I can get around the corner to the next ruck is obviously a hell of a lot.
And everything's harder.
Slow.
Your fitness gets challenged 100%,
more. Yeah, of course. So really important that we do really target those sort of scapulars as we're warming up. That's why everything has got the same sort of similar feelings as we go through the warm up, because it's such a key point. Obviously, we're going bench, then we're going into some pulling exercise. Obviously, that's then going to be the same thing. So important. Scaps are a huge site for us to make sure we get warm.
For sure. And if you watch how I was doing that then as well, I'm really trying to force myself through a full range of motion either side of that exercise. It's not one of those ones that we just want to kind of go like this on. I'm pinching my shoulder blades back, like Polly was saying there, and then I'm trying to reach out as far as I can as well, and all of that's going to challenge both the scaps, all that kind of upper back musculature, the rear delts, everything. So really important that you try and chase full range of motion on these little exercises, as opposed to just kind of going through like this and just ticking up the box.
Yeah, like you in piano works hours. Okay, so once we've got through our warm-up, okay, so just like normally a warm-up is going to take us anywhere between the sort of 8 and 10 minutes, okay? So if it's taking us any more than that, what I need to do is make sure my intensity is going a little bit higher. What you'll find within sort of lots of rugby sessions or anybody training in general is they miss a warm-up out, and it's so important to make sure that the rest of your lifts, like we've been speaking about, the rest of your lifts then get the benefit of a warm-up. Obviously, it's really good for us in terms of making sure our body's ready to go, we're reducing the risk of injury, and we're obviously making sure those high sites or those high output sites are then getting targeted to potentiate into our next lift. So a warm-up should only be anywhere between sort of 8 and 10 minutes. And if it isn't, I need to make sure that I'm increasing my intensity as we go through. So gas nice and warm, we're going to move into our first pairing, okay? So what we're looking to do is go into a dynamic superset, which is going to include some sort of upper body plyometrics into some full body power expression. What we're looking to do again is a further potentiation of our warm-up, which is so important to make sure that we get the most out of our strength work. Okay, so what we're going to do, guys, we're going to start for the band assisted plyo press up. Okay, so I'll show you how to set that up in a second. So band assisted plyo press up. Looking for a short rest period, anywhere between sort of 10 and 20 seconds, get yourself set. Then you're going to go into 3 max effort slams, okay? So we're looking for some upper body explosive power, okay, into some full body power expression stuff. Really simple exercises. What it's going to be is ensuring that the technical element is really low, so then I can ensure that I am producing as much power as I possibly can, which I'm ready to go into my next lift, okay?
Sure.
So, really easy.
Just step.
Oh, rich. That's so rich. That's incredible.
No, just while Pody's setting that up as well, we've talked a lot about power at the moment and kind of the continuum that we're kind of working across for our performance program. Now, as we're moving into a strength speed block, the emphasis is less on the power and the speed side of things. We are progressing more into loading, and that should be the focus. We've talked a lot about the power at the moment, but on this periodization model that we use on the force velocity curve, just because we're progressing towards the strength side of things with slower velocities doesn't mean that we don't want to remove power completely from the program. So this is a really easy way for us to keep a little bit of a power stimulus and some of that rate of force contraction work in there, but without us kind of taking away from the rest of the session. So we've got like clusters and we've got some big strength exercises that we can keep as the focus of the session, but this just allows us to keep that stimulus in there so that we don't regress in it.
We're going to go into a band assisted plyo press up. Okay, so just stand up for me, guys, sorry, just so we can see. Stand up. Oh, sorry, you are. Wow.
We're just throwing short jumps around today.
Going nuts.
Oh, shit.
Okay, so what we're looking to do is you're going to just slot yourself inside the band, okay? So a little bit, it's not very difficult, okay? So easier if you're with somebody, if not, you can just sort of get yourself in. So all you're going to do, Gas just going to chuck his arms through.
Thanks, bro.
What I'm looking to do is you want that just in the midline of his chest, okay? Down into a press-up position. What's really important, you see lots of people, they'll walk out too far, and then what it's going to do is going to look to pull you backwards. It's really important that when I set myself up, I want to be directly under the band, so then the band is straight, because obviously all my force the band is going to create is going to pull me towards the bar. If I'm out further, you'll see people almost stand up, okay? So important you get yourself under the bar more than anything.
On band selection as well, drop the egos. It's better to go for a thicker band because we're looking at a lightweight and max velocity, okay? That's the stimulus that we want, is a really fast contraction. So if you're on a little red band or something, it's probably not going to give you the support that you need to generate that kind of force. So we want a nice heavy band, leave the ego, and try and punch it away as hard as you can.
Okay, so when we're talking about intent, when Gas is going to do this now, we're looking to come down quickly and up. It's almost using that stretch shortening cycle as quick as we possibly can, okay? So down and up, he's going to press with straight arms. And go. Yeah, fantastic, lovely. Once we've come from there, like I said, anywhere between a 10 and 20 second rest period, just allow those almost micro rest periods, which will then allow us to sort of express that force that a little bit better, okay? So just tiny little bit of rest sometimes, catch your breath, compose yourself into those positions, and then you can express your power as hard as you can. What we're looking to do now is just gonna go into a med ball slam, okay? Hard as you can, look to slam between your feet, and I wanna just absolutely, good. Idea is I'm looking just to melt that ball at the floor as hard as I can, okay? So we say it all the time around sort of med ball slams, and people don't actually express how hard we should be slamming that ball. The idea is I'm literally looking to throw it as hard as I possibly can, okay? If I'm just picking the ball up and I'm just dropping it at the floor, I'm not going to create any power. We talk about power power production only works if I'm training sort of 90 to 90 or 95 plus of my capabilities. We're not going to develop any power if I'm sub-max, okay? So we talk about intent, we talk about intent, we talk about sort of effort levels all the time at SW7, but we cannot preach enough how important this is. If you're not doing it with intent, if I'm not doing it as fast and as explosive as I possibly can, it does not transfer, so I may as well not do it. I'm wasting my energy.
For sure.
Yeah?
It's not the exercise, it's how you do it. So just because you're doing a med ball throw doesn't mean it's a power exercise. It's how you perform a med ball throw that will make it a power exercise. So nice sort of superset, get you firing, get the back firing, the lats, the chest, all your pressing exercises. So body's feeling good. We've got 3 rounds of this, and then we'll rip into some bench.
Yeah, fantastic.
This is an exercise I see clients and just people in general fucking up pretty consistently, to be honest. I think because they think it's like power, they've got to be fast. They get the balls about here, and it's all very quick, and it's just to here and it's here, and it's all quite stiff. We want to see that full extension, like Paulie was just saying then. Let yourself extend, stretch at the arms and everything, and then it's that full kind of, like you were saying at the start, full body transfer of power all the way down and melt it to the floor then.
Nice. Nice. Dark mode. Ooh, here we go. Woo. Smelling colours now. So we're going to be taking Gas through his next element of his session. We're obviously going to go into our bench press, okay? So a staple within any rugby training program, really important that we have that horizontal push in place every week within every block, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to take him through within this strength speed block, okay, we're going to go into a different element, so a different sort of variation of how his sets are conducted, okay? So what's called cluster sets. Cluster sets are micro sets with short rest periods put in between in order to increase our sort of ability to lift heavier weights, with obviously then set rest periods in between each set, which allows us to train at higher levels for more repetitions at a time, okay? So how that's going to look. Gas is going to perform 3 reps. He's then going to re-rack the bar. Once he's re-racked the bar, we're going to rest 20 seconds. He's then going to take it back off. Another 3 reps, back on, rest 20 seconds, and then for the last one then, we're going to go another 3 reps again. So 9 reps in total. Okay, we're looking at 78% for this set. Obviously the first week of our block, 9 reps in total. Okay, does take a little bit longer, but ensures that we're allowed to be able to train at higher capacities for longer periods due to those short rest periods in between. In between those rest periods, all we're looking to do is just relax, make sure we're prepped for the next sort of bout of 3, okay, every time we do it.
So, something like cluster set, especially if you're one of our athletes in the app, can look a little bit daunting because it'll come through as 9 sets. It's 3 sets, 3 by 3 by 3. So it's not 9 whole sets, so don't worry too much. If you're in our app and you remember, read the session detail and you will see, because I've broken it all down in there for you. So yeah, it's not as...
Just minus the spelling mistakes.
It might be a few spelling mistakes. I'm a PT, not an English teacher.
Okay, Gass, you feeling good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so ideally what we're looking to do now is get through. We're going to go obviously into our first working set, okay? So like Gass just said, 3 by 3 by 3. We're looking at a 20-second rest period in between. So those intra-set rest periods, so important that we get those correct, okay? Because obviously this day and age, everybody's got their phones out, okay? It's so important that if you've got a wearable, that you can just sort of put the timer on. Make sure we are really strict with that. Obviously, it's going to take us a few seconds to set up either side. So my advice, once I've clicked on, okay, so once I've re-wrapped the bar, start my watch. Once I've started my watch, then I can rest for 15 seconds. Once that 15 seconds hits, then I would start my setup and make sure that 20 seconds is really controlled, because what happens is if I start going into bigger elements, or I open my phone and it's a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, it doesn't become the set that we're after, okay, a 9 sets.
You'll be there all flipping day.
Yeah, I was about to say 9 sets. Because if you treat it as 9 sets, okay, your sessions are going to be hours on end. Okay.
Love cluster sets. We always see kind of the biggest kick in our athletes' numbers when we use them.
Yeah.
Great opportunity to get more volume, accumulate more volume at heavier loads, and also maintain better bar speeds at heavier loads, which is why I love using it in a strength speed block, because you're kind of on that blend between, we still want a little bit of velocity in that movement, but we're leaning towards that strength side a little bit more. So it's a really nice middle ground, especially when we start looking at building towards a max strength block. So yeah, we'll get into it. I'll get warmed up, and then yeah, just watch my intent on them as well. So again, using that buzzword.
Yeah.
Because we're having that intra-set rest, it allows us to keep a bit of a better bar speed. So just try and maintain that bar speed as we go. 78%, will be slightly in reserve, but in total for the 9 reps, that's quite a high percentage. So you should be able to move the bar pretty quickly, and hopefully that intraset rest allows for that quality too.
Yeah, lift off.
Yeah, please, bro.
Okay, here we go then. Set your scaps, plant your feet, little arch. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Intent now. Good. Fantastic. Good, so start the timer. Just breathe. Make sure you sit up. Let's not go down. Okay, so stay lying down. That's really important. Sit up, breathe, recuperate. Okay, make sure you're setting yourself up in between each set. Okay, here we go. Gas here. It's 14, 15. Here we go. Going in 3, 2, 1, and up. Here we go. Control now. So as you'll notice now, as you start to get through these sets, they start to get a little bit harder. Okay, so the first 3, probably within reserve. Okay, and then in the middle 3 is starting to get a little bit tasty, and these next 3 now could be the way we're looking to go. Okay, so here we go, going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and up. Here we go. Last one. Fantastic. Good stuff. Well done. So typical rest times on between our cluster sets. Okay, at the very end, probably looking at like 2 to 3 minutes on our recovery
I'd say
time.
about 2:30 to 3.
Yeah, just purely because it is a lot of work, and obviously because you get those intraset rest periods, you don't actually understand or you don't realize how much work you're actually getting through. So if we programmed 78% for 9 repetitions, most people or most of us wouldn't actually get that if our percentages were correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are in those positions where we're overweight or over percentage for the amount of reps we're doing, but due to the intraset workout or the intraset rest periods, where it allows us to train at higher percentages with the same bar velocity. So important for us.
Yeah, they're big sets. So make sure you earn a nice 2.5 to 3 minute rest.
Yeah.
Make sure you get that ATP back in the body so we can maintain that bar speed heading into set 2 and 3 then.
Go on, cast on.
Chins then, is it?
Yeah, brother.
Next up, we've got some weighted chin clusters. Now, slightly different to our bench press clusters. These ones are going to be a little bit closer to strength rep ranges. With our bench, we still wanted a little element of kind of that speed and power work slightly, but this one's going to be a little bit more raw strength. So we've got 2 by 2 by 2, and then 3 rounds of that. So very similar format. We're going 2 reps, 20 seconds rest, 2 reps, 20 seconds rest, 2 reps, full rest then after that. Working probably anywhere between 80 and 82% of your 1RM on chins. And if you are struggling to work out your 1RM on chins, combine the weight that you're using with your body weight as well, and you'll get a much more accurate number. But yeah, we'll just fly on into it.
Really important with stuff like this that we do use a bench. Okay, obviously gas needs to regardless. But
vertically challenged.
Yeah, especially when I'm using anything that's weighted. Okay, should you make sure that we use a bench or something that we can step off? It's so important that we don't put anything under our feet, just purely because it does tend to take the range out of my movement. Okay, so if I'm then not stretching at the bottom and I'm not pulling my chin over the top of the bar, I'm actually losing the efficiency out of the movement. Such a good movement, but if it's not done correctly, then we are missing quite a lot of sort of adaptation that we can encourage out of the movement. Okay, so obviously going to use it with the bench. Okay, step off with the bench with gas, and then just making sure that stretching at the bottom, so important, and then just pulling our chin over the top. Yep. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Fantastic. Nice. Gas, probably a little bit low there for gas in terms of sort of loading. Needs to go a little bit heavier, but what's really important, if you watch Gas from the side when he does that, is his body alignment is almost spot on. It's really important that when we do chin, sometimes when we get to that max effort, what happens is our feet will tend to kick up, or I'll try and kick my feet back as a way to sort of create some momentum. It is really important that we try and keep ourselves in as straight line as position, so our body alignment is right on point. Okay. Also, when I'm using that weight, it is so important. If I'm sort of swinging back and forth, okay, it's obviously not as safe. Due to with the weight being in the wrong areas. Okay, so really important. The tighter I can keep myself, and if you watch Gas do that, controlled with his step off, controlled with the way he comes down. Okay, so just make sure we're keeping nice and safe, and then it'll encourage us to do the exercise a little bit more. Now we finished our bench and our chin work, we're going to go into what on the program was called shock absorbers, okay? So catchy little name, Gassy's just called this section of the program. All we're going to do, essentially, shock absorbers are going to be those high collision sites on our body, so our shoulders predominantly, shoulders, mid-back, okay, thoracic sort of positions. What we're going to do is just make sure they are obviously we've got as much muscle mass on those in season as we possibly can to make sure that when we're going into these high rates of collision and obviously sort of like contact twice, 3 times a week potentially in some teams, okay, it's just making sure that they are as robust as they possibly can be, okay? So lots of people within sort of rugby, especially rugby players, suffer with shoulder injuries, okay? It's probably the most common up with hamstrings. It is really important that we keep them as robust as we possibly can.
And this is kind of that debate then where it's like, should athletes train like bodybuilders? Athletes shouldn't train like bodybuilders. There is a place for it, okay?
Yeah.
So we will always finish our sessions off, even while in season, with some kind of hypertrophy top-up. It's important to have muscle mass in those areas that are going to take impact to protect them. So enjoy some hypertrophy after you've done your strength, after you've done your power work. There is definitely a place for it. Just make sure it sits in the right kind of exercise selection within your session. So start with your light power work, into your heavy strength work, then you can chase some hypertrophy. There's nothing wrong with that at all, as long as you're keeping it kind of away from game day. So this is a Tuesday session for us. Now with this circuit, we've got 3 exercises. I programmed 2 rounds. If you fancy a third, by all means go for it. I just don't want to smoke you too much. 2 rounds, we're looking at 8 to 12 reps. So please choose, if you're only doing 2 rounds, choose a weight straight from the off that is going to allow you to fail within that rep range. If we're only doing 2 rounds, we're really looking for quality. So make sure you're pushing to absolute failure within that bracket. So choose your weights wisely and yeah, enjoy a little bit of a pump. Happier now, coach?
Much better, mate. Well done. Just sort of like between exercises, the rest times are not going to be stated on the app, just purely because we are just looking to encourage you to go from set to set, okay? By the time you move between each exercise, like obviously just moving on to the bench, get set, get ready for your next set, that is enough rest time. Anywhere between sort of 20 and 30 seconds should be able to just to fire into the next one. They look to be high intensity, 3 to failure back to back should really raise that heart rate. So if it's hard, it's supposed to be hard.
Wouldn't be an upper body session at SW7 without some guns to finish. So we've got some hammer curls and we've got some rope extensions. So hammers, try and go reasonably heavy. We're going for 6 to 8 for the first 2 sets. Last set's a blowout for 12 to 15. Same goes to the rope extensions. So let's get some good work in. Don't have to overthink this one too much. Pick up a nice weight and cut it up. I got asked a question earlier in the app, and it was, what intensity should I train my arm exercises to? And it should always be absolute max. Don't leave any reps in the tank when you're training the arms, unless you don't want your arms to grow, which I don't think anyone wants that. So with the arms, don't overthink it. If you've got 3 sets, take them all the way to the wall, and hopefully they'll grow.
We still got hope yet, mate. We got hope.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so even when you're like doing bilateral things like bilateral hammers, sometimes we talk about getting to failure. Failure of bilateral hammers might be, for instance, 8 reps. But then if you drop down to unilateral, so going from double arm to single arm, you might then encourage, we talk about on the previous set with the movement, with the lateral raises, encouraging some momentum. It's the same thing with the unilateral, from bilateral to unilateral. Sometimes there is some reps left in the tank, but we have to just go down and take our time into a single arm. So with stuff like that, we're talking about really on those end sets where we're on those 12s to 15s, and you really want to take it to max intensity or like max failure levels. Then do as many as you can bilateral. Once you get the failure, then hit them single arm just to finish off. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This has been our strength, speed, upper body session on our new block on our performance program. Really nice to actually show you how to perform the exercises, what we kind of expect as coaches in terms of loading, technique, and intensity when performing them. Strength, speed, strength, max strength, peak power, all of it is trained in so many kind of different ways, and it's nice to actually see that intent and how that would progress throughout our periodization. We are currently kind of here, I'll put this up on the screen, we're like here on our force velocity curve. So we've kind of been building up from your kind of high velocity, low load, up to a higher load and a slightly lower velocity. So we're kind of climbing up that force velocity curve. So it's nice for you as athletes to kind of understand why we do that and where we're at in our kind of training phase while in season. January we were peak power, Feb we were speed strength. We're now in strength speed. We're building to max strength, which will be our final block while in season before we get into some tasty off-season and pre-season work again. But Paulie, anything you want to add to?
Yeah, just like we talk about the force velocity curve and the different elements, but in my opinion, like we spoke about earlier on in the video, that it has to be trained concurrently. So we're making sure that we are tapping into each element of the force velocity curve within either the same session or within the same block. So obviously this is our strength speed focus, okay? So we're really sort of pushing that. That's our phase we're on within the rugby program. But like you've seen within the session, there is elements of our speed strength. There is elements of our max strength, our peak power velocity stuff, okay? So it is really important that we do incorporate that as a whole, and at SW7, that's what we focus on, making sure that we target each element of the force velocity curve within the sessions or within a training phase concurrently, so then we can ensure that we're not missing those elements that transfer into peak performance each week or each training phase. We talk about intensity, we talk about our sessions being done at the max intent, okay? That is so transferable to going on field because the game is played at the highest rate that we possibly can. So if I can learn to train in the gym and if I can learn to train on field at these really sort of high intense sort of levels, what happens is then when I go into on field, as well as my sort of like performance increasing, my intensity, my intent will then increase as well. So important.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight into why we program things, exercise selection, exercise order, and obviously the structure of our blocks as well. It's not just random exercises that change every 4 weeks. There is actual structure and progression to this. If you're a rugby player and you want to know how to train like a professional athlete, please hit the link below, join our program, join us within the app. We'll be looking after you within there, and you can jump on the Rugby Performance live. It progresses every month. So yeah, but Paulie, thank you for today, brother.
No stress.
And we'll see you in the next one.